Welcome to Bluegrass Brooklyn, our podcast all about the music we love, coming to you straight from the Bluegrass borough of Brooklyn, New York.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 6 of our Bluegrass Brooklyn podcast. My name is Liz Wolfe, and I am co-host with Mike Wilner, who has the week off this week. I'm sure he's doing something fun. And today I am taking a trip down memory lane. I went back to my hometown of Pittsburgh, and I got to play in some jams and talk to some Pittsburgh folks. So we've got a really fun episode for you. I also speak with my sisters about our early bluegrass experience when we were kids. And just as we get started in here, I want to remind you of a few things. Of course, do not miss Andy Statman. He is playing with my friend Gene Yellen with his band, Andy's Ramble, and that is going to be at Delia's Lounge Sunday, June 8th at 7:30. It's sure to be a packed house, so you may want to actually make reservations. Go to deliaslounge.com. And we are all anticipating just a couple of weeks away. Porch Stomp is going to be on the 21st. You can go to porchstomp.com to find out all the information about that. And when you are there, do not forget to go see Mike in the flesh at Stage 6. He has curated a stage of really awesome musicians, many of whom have played at Delia's. And one insider scoop, we've narrowed down the date for Jam Jersey, and that event is going to be announced very soon, Jam Jersey 2026. So remember to follow us at Bluegrass Brooklyn on Instagram and Facebook. That's Bluegrass Brooklyn spelled BKLYN. And don't forget, you can find out about all the jams we're doing on the west side of Manhattan at bluegrassjamsnearme.com. By the way, the fiddler on those snippets from Trish's music is actually Becky Buller, who I've interviewed and will be coming in an upcoming episode. Okay, enough of that. Let's go and have this great episode talking to some great Pittsburgh folks. Welcome, everybody, to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And in case you don't know, I'm a Pittsburgh native. I grew up outside of Pittsburgh on a sheep farm. I don't even know if you knew that, Trish.
I didn't know that.
And so I get the great fun of being able to go back to Pittsburgh and jam sometimes. And that's where I met Trish Imbrogno. And Trish is an amazing bass player, and she's also an awesome organizer. We are kindred spirits. She's basically the Liz Wolfe of Pittsburgh, where she organizes jams and knows all about the jam scene. So welcome, Trish.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks for having me.
So I reconnected with Trish a couple weeks ago when I was back in Pittsburgh, and I went to a jam at the Starlite Lounge, which is a classic Pittsburgh place. I think they have $3 beers and the most amazing pierogies you ever want to eat. So we reconnected, and I said, Trish, you got to be on my podcast. And she said, yes. So welcome, Trish. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and just tell the audience your musical story.
I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, up in the Allegheny National Forest. I've been playing bass for a long time, and I started out as a classical player. I started out in school with my high school orchestra conductor giving me a bass and a bow and saying, have at it. And I have a degree in classical bass performance. Played Carnegie Hall in New York twice.
Oh.
Avery Fisher, which is now David Geffen Hall, where the New York Phil plays. I've played there.
Yeah.
Not with the New York Phil, that would be lovely, but that was not the case. So I've played some pretty big halls in my classical days. And about 2018, I was like, I think I'm done playing classical music. I was gigging Americana music, and I loved it, and traded in all my orchestral contracts, pulled on some cowboy boots, and said, all right, here we go. So that's what I've been doing predominantly since 2018. Is playing bluegrass and folk and country.
Well, first of all, I want to mention that we know that Trish is from Pittsburgh because she said Carnegie and not Carnegie. That's how New Yorkers say it. It is not Carnegie, it is Carnegie. We know that because Mr. Carnegie was from Pittsburgh, or
He sure was.
built his fortune there. So that's fun that you played in Carnegie Hall. And so I know you're also part of a very funny name band, which
Okay.
I've had the fun of seeing play at IBMA last year. Tell us about that.
So I play in Pittsburgh with a band called the Sweaty Already String Band. And it's exactly what you think it is, like the stuff that comes off your forehead that's perspiration, sweaty already. Patrick Vereen, who plays acoustic guitar in Sweaty Already, is a sweater. So he picks his guitar up in 40-degree weather and he's dripping. So we just decided that would be a good way to name the band, would be Sweaty Already String Band. Nobody forgets it. And you can find us anywhere.
I do see a lot of men playing that get quite sweaty very quickly. It doesn't impact me.
Doesn't impact me either, Liz. I wish I sweated more. That would be more calories. If I am sweating, it's a 95-degree day. Probably like when you saw us at Ligonier and it was so hot that day that we were all employing the band name that day.
She's referring to this Ligonier Bluegrass Festival that I went to last summer. I definitely know I was the last one to go to sleep that night in the campsite. And you might ask, why, Liz? Weren't there hundreds of people there? The answer is no. There were about 50 people there, and it was deathly silent as I was brushing my teeth to go to bed. I'm always the last one up, and it was a very fun, small bluegrass festival out in Ligonier, PA.
Which is also where Andrew Carnegie summered, was Ligonier, PA.
So let's talk about the Pittsburgh jamming scene a little bit. I had so far mostly been to the Starlite. I know there's other stuff going on. I am on a email list that if anybody is listening to this from the Pittsburgh scene is not on, you can get on, and there's lots of calendars and things. But tell us a little bit more about the scene in Pittsburgh.
We had a really vibrant scene long before I even knew what bluegrass was, the 70s, 80s, even some of the early 90s, but it started to decline. And we had a pretty vibrant band scene here. We had Mac Martin and the Allegheny Drifters, who had some national attention, and John and Wendy Mackin Band. And so we had this really vibrant bluegrass scene. Along with it came this jam scene that was happening at the same time. Everything started to dwindle in the 90s. Actually, the jam you went to, the Starlight Lounge, that jam's been going on every single Tuesday night. For 26 years, any Tuesday night still, you can go to the Starlight Lounge, there will be somebody there. And it was hosted, and still is, by Lou Scheinman, who is a grandfather of bluegrass. He is an encyclopedia. If you have any questions about bluegrass history, he's your guy. He knows who recorded it, who they did it with, what album it's on, what color shirt they were wearing. He has this knowledge of bluegrass that is just expansive. So it's just this kind of place where you can go any Tuesday night and have that jam. And so for a long time, that was it. That was the jam in Pittsburgh. As I started to get more into playing bluegrass, I wanted selfishly to play more than Tuesday night. And it started out as Sweaty Already. It was an excuse for us to get together at some place and have a couple of beers and play some music. And then people wanted to come, they could. So we started some Sunday afternoon jams. And we have 3 locations. There's a place in the north side, a brewery, shocking, Allegheny City Brewing. So one in the Strip District at a brewery, Cinderlands, and then we have one at an Irish pub in the Lawrenceville neighborhood. And they just vary depending on how our schedules work out and who's available to host those. And then there's a Thursday night jam, if you want to go a half hour north of the city, at Stick City Brewing.
It's one of the reasons I did go to the Stick City Brewery once, but that was a big draw. I was like, I don't know, if it had been in a tea shop, maybe I wouldn't have cared so much, but I probably would have gone anyway.
And sometimes, depending on the brewery, I know Stick City, anybody who goes there to play gets their first beer for free. So if you're looking for a night out and maybe a little cheaper tab, you can go pick a few tunes, have a beer, and hang out. And Wednesday nights in the South Hills at East End Brewing. Pittsburgh is a football town with a drinking problem, so I guess it's also a bluegrass town with a drinking problem. I know East End Brewing has a location at our South Hills in a neighborhood called Mount Lebanon, and John and Wendy Mackin, who have been playing together for years, probably as long as I've been alive, host that jam. And it's a banjo and guitar always will be there as the hosts. All of our jams around get 10, 15 people, just depending on the day and who's available, and the mix of instruments is always different. Being the bass player, any jam I host, there'll always be a bass player. And if other bass players want to come, I'll gladly let you play. So some jams aren't like that, Liz. Somebody owns the jam and they're not going to let anybody play.
Yes, that is one issue with bass players. It's a funny thing, actually, because it's a little bit like playing the oboe, because you can only have one and sometimes zero show up. I mean, it weirdly, I had to set up a little text chat with the bass players that I know, like, is anybody coming Sunday? Is anybody coming Sunday? And then it's like, I'm available, but wait, that's too many.
It's a feast or famine with us, it seems.
Yeah, but it is nice when that gets shared. I do know some folks who don't go to jams because they think they won't have an opportunity to play, and that's too bad. We don't want that to happen.
Nope, it's good etiquette to share the bass too if another bass player shows up. It's how we all learn.
Is there anything specific culturally in Pittsburgh jams that you can tell me about?
Jams tend to have a regional vibe, right? I love to go to jams in other cities when I'm traveling because everybody plays a different circle of songs, right? Everybody's got their niche of what they do. And in Pittsburgh, if you come to any of our jams, you should probably know the Cherokee Shuffle. That is the Western Pennsylvania Bluegrass National Anthem. So we say, everybody please rise for the Western Pennsylvania Bluegrass National Anthem. And it's a great tune. It's a little chordy and there's a lot of changes. Why that has become a jam tune in Pittsburgh, I'm not 100% sure, but it is our cultural, regional thing that everybody knows. So that's definitely the hook in Pittsburgh is the Cherokee Shuffle.
One time I came to a Pittsburgh jam pretty early on. I think I was still playing the ukulele at that time. And all the jams I'd gone to in New York City, everybody gets a break on every song, which gets really long because in New York, there's often a lot of people. And so the very first time I went to a jam at the Starlite in Pittsburgh, I was leading my song, but then I was giving a break to everybody. And at some point, the jam leader turned to me and was like, stop giving out breaks. I was like, what? You can do that? And that's when I learned it's not a rule everywhere that you have to give a break to every single person for every single song. And it was amazing. We got to do more songs because not every person took a break on every single song. That was a big lesson for me.
It's funny you say that because that was probably Lou at the Starlight.
Probably.
And he likes the tunes to run as they would as the song goes, right? So I'll usually double up my breaks if there's a lot of people there and I'll be like, okay, 2 breaks between this verse and chorus, 2 breaks here.
The players are there to support the singing. And I feel very often that at jams you go to, it's really a lot about instrumentals, even though it's a singing song. And of course, that's a little boring for me because I am a singer and I'm only really getting competent at taking any kind of breaks. So to stand there for 10 minutes while the people take breaks, listen, all you people listening, I love you. Your instrumentals are great. But let's just not do so many of them.
Tighten it up.
That way more people get to do songs.
Right.
Yeah. So give us your best Pittsburgh jam anecdote.
We host our Sunday jams. We start in August, September, and we run through December. And then we start in January and we run through usually May and take the summers off. We don't get a lot of nice weather in Pittsburgh. So if there's a Sunday that the weather's going to be nice, we know people aren't coming inside to go to a jam. But we had taken Christmas off and we came back in January and boy, people were ready. They were out. There were probably 30 people that came to that jam. It was the first time I've ever been overwhelmed hosting a jam. And at one point there was another bass player there and I just left the jam. I was like, I'm going to go have a beer. I don't even know how to manage these people. It was a little chaotic but it was fun. And someone showed up to the jam with a banjo bass. I don't even know what you would call it. It was a giant banjo. He had an amplifier. He had a funny little hat he wore. And I say funny little hat because it looks like something you'd see on like Charlie Chaplin, like that kind of hat. And he stood in the middle of the circle with his bass banjo, playing the bass banjo the whole time. Yeah, I just didn't even know what to do. I was like, I got to get out of here for a minute and let it kind of marinate and see what happens. It was a wild time. It's almost like a frat party jam is what it felt like. There should have been a jug of jungle juice in the corner somewhere.
There's so many things that you said. Big banjo, amplifier, standing in the middle of the circle. I could see how that would contribute to a difficult experience.
It was a wild time, Liz.
Okay, well, you have some other things happening around. You said you were releasing a new EP, and there's some fun things to talk about that. So give us the scoop on that one.
Yeah, it's my first time recording under my own name. So I have a pretty long discography of albums I've played on with other people. But if you search me on Spotify, you don't find me because I'm just a sideman. But I'd also like people to know I exist in the musical universe. So I build a band of all women that have forged a path for me or are coming up as the new guard. The band is Dee Dee Weiland's playing guitar and singing some harmonies with me. Murphy Henry's playing banjo. She wrote the book on women in bluegrass in the 90s. She's just a force of nature. So is Dee Dee. They're both the original guard. Like they are the women. And Becky Buller is going to play fiddle. And Rainey Matkey, who plays with Sister Sadie, new guard coming up. She's 22, just killing it right now playing mandolin. So it is a crushing band of women. And just short little album, 5 tunes, all traditional. Start releasing in June.
In June. Okay, got it. So we'll put that in the show notes. And of course, we have on this podcast talked about women in bluegrass. And this is a conversation that we've been having, which is that what's wonderful is it's no longer like a novelty to be having these all women bands. I mean, nobody thought it was a novelty to have all men bands, right? So why it's not a novelty for all women, but we're seeing these amazing talents rise up. So I'm curious, from your perspective, do you have thoughts about women in bluegrass?
For a long time, it was the dudes just did their thing. And finally, women are going, well, we can do that too. And why aren't we? And why aren't we working together more? It's a different vibe when you're working with all women. I play with a female group in Pittsburgh. And it's a different vibe when you get together with 4 or 5 women in a rehearsal setting, and there's just something different about it. And I'm not disparaging men, any guys listening, but I mean, it's more intuitive, I guess. We all just work differently together as a group of women versus being the woman in the band, which is what we've all experienced for a really long time.
Not just the woman in the band, but the woman at the jam. A lot of times these are my jams I'm organizing, and I show up and I'm like the only woman. There's 20 guys and me.
There were 2 of us last Sunday. There was a fiddle player there.
Yeah.
So we had 2 women at the jam.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm always want to bring it up and encourage any women listening to show up and just strut your stuff.
Absolutely. Don't be intimidated by the boys. Pete and I were just listening. Pete's my partner. We were just listening to Molly Tuttle's Side Saddle, the song about I don't want to ride side saddle. I want to ride bow-legged like the boys.
Yeah, that's great. Good song. So this EP is coming out in June, you said?
Yep. There'll be a single coming out in early June. And there'll be another single that comes out at the end of the summer. And then the full release, the rest of the EP will come out in the fall.
And do you have a website?
Yep, I don't have a lot of information out there yet because I'm going back to Nashville. Becky's finishing up her fiddle parts next week, so I'm scooting back down there for a quick Nashville turnaround for her session. But it's trishplaysbass.com is my website.
Trishplaysbass.com. Perfect. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I always feel like I'm back home when I go to Pittsburgh. I love that I can sneak in a couple jams when I'm there. There's a Pittsburgh Facebook group where the Pittsburgh jams are listed, and we put it out and people showed up, and it was just so enjoyable, and everybody there really had a great time.
Yeah, you mentioned the listserv, the Western Pennsylvania Bluegrass listserv, where we list a lot of things, but if people are on Facebook, there's also a Western Pennsylvania Bluegrass group that lists a lot of stuff that's coming up in the area. And then that Facebook page is Bluegrass Jams in Pittsburgh. So give it a follow if you're coming into the area. We just had somebody in town from Baltimore on Sunday, and they found us and came to the jam, and turns out we all know a bunch of the same people because bluegrass is small. If you are in the area, I definitely encourage you to come to a jam.
It's so fun to go and be back in the place where I grew up, and it's relaxed and enjoyable. So I'm so glad we have that connection together there. One other quick fact about Trish, she is also newly a Wernick instructor. She and Pete are now doing Wernick classes out in Pittsburgh. So if anybody's listening to this and wants to get into bluegrass, just connect with Trish. TrishPlaysBass.com. And she is your source for bluegrass in Pittsburgh. Thank you so much for being on with us, Trish.
Yeah, Liz, thanks for having me, and come back and jam with us in Pittsburgh.
been great getting to know Trish and some other characters that are in that Starlite jam in Pittsburgh. So let's listen in.
My home's across the Smoky Mountains. My home's across the Smoky Mountains.
All right, so we got Buck here. Buck, tell us what brings you to the Starlite Lounge tonight.
Well, I've been coming here probably for about 30 years. I started playing music here when I was a young man, and from there on, I just love the people and I love the music. So.
All right, and you're from Pittsburgh, obviously.
No, I'm from up in Natrona Heights, but I've lived and played music everywhere. I used to play at all the parks and everything up north there.
Are you playing tonight?
Well, I brought my guitar. I don't know if I'll get it out or not, but
What?
so,
You came all the way here.
Yeah.
I know you didn't just come for the pierogies.
No, I love to play and sing. That's what I love to do. It's what I've done almost all my life. So.
All right.
Made a couple CDs. I got one CD on YouTube right now.
What's your last name, Buck?
They call me Old Buck. That's what I go by, Old Buck.
Old Buck. So if I go on YouTube and look up Old Buck, I'm going to find you.
You'll find me there. All you have to do is type in Skeets Martin.
It's Keets Martin.
Right. And then type in Keeper of the Door.
I'm glad I got a chance to meet you. I'm from Pittsburgh, but I live in New York City, and I have a podcast
Oh, my.
with my friend Mike. But I told him I was coming to Pittsburgh, and I wanted to talk to some Pittsburgh originals.
Well-
And you are one.
I'll tell you what. I just love this place. Nothing but nice people come here. We don't have no trouble, no time, so that's a good thing.
It is a
We
good
don't
thing.
have fist fights or shootings or stabbings or anything, so
So far, I haven't seen any of those either.
that's a good reason why I come here. I'm
All right.
too old for anything else. I sure am glad to meet you, honey.
I'm glad to meet you too,
And-
Buck.
and
We'll
thank you.
look you up on YouTube. Old Buck.
It's on there, honey.
All right. Nice to meet you.
Okay, honey, thank you.
In heaven there'll be no pardon. If I could have one wish, I know.
Wait, how are you gonna do the breaks? Just in reverse, or are you gonna do the verse?
I usually do like one verse, one chorus.
So you do the whole form?
Yeah,
Okay.
but one person and the next person.
Yeah. I want because some people do that and some don't. So I just didn't know if I should keep playing verses or.
No, let's do verse, chorus on the breaks. Like you'll do verse, you'll do chorus. Yeah, you'll take it.
Yes, you have.
Way down. Uncle's Georgia, be back. Way down. Uncle's side, old friends, and turn the next one. 4. We'll go and leave if you wish to. Never let it cross your mind. Sing the Okay, I am here with my two sisters, Ruth Ann and Jennifer. First of all, quick facts. I'm the youngest. And we are here to talk about one of our earliest recollections of a time that we went to what we fondly refer to as the Fiddler's Convention. All right, I'm going to set the stage. So the background is my mother was tired of living in Pittsburgh, and so she moved out to a 148-acre farm and started buying sheep. And this was in 1969. And then I think it might have been the following summer. And by then we had a pickup truck, and we had a bunch of these college guys hanging out and working on the farm and stuff. And all I know is that one day we were all thrown into the back of the truck with a couple of sleeping bags, a bunch of luggage, some maybe 3 or 4 college kids at about 7, 8 o'clock at night, and we started driving south to North Carolina. So we were literally, illegally, probably
I don't think it was illegal to ride in the back of a pickup truck in those days.
All right, let's make sure people understand. There was a cap on the truck.
Yes, absolutely.
So we were in the back of the truck. I was about 7. Jen would have been 8. Ruthann would have been
About 10
10 years old. And we drive all night down to what we think was Asheville, North Carolina. And we pull in, and then we set up camp. So, do either of you remember anything about setting up camp?
Yes, it was very muddy. We were in the forest, and it was really muddy, and everyone was having a grand time.
Yes, it rained pretty much the entire time.
We had a lot of fun. Every time the sun came out, everyone would sing, "Here comes the sun, do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun." But we had a lot of guitar playing people in our campsite quite a bit. I don't remember very much about what acts we saw or anything like that. I think mostly Jen and I wandered around wide-eyed at all of the people and the hippies that were everywhere.
So, again, I was 7 years old, and I'm pretty sure that my mother had no idea where I was the majority of the time that I was there. And I remember, Ruthann, you saying something like that you noticed that I was wandering around by myself quite unselfconsciously. Is that a memory that you have too?
Well, I think it was a very safe place. We were allowed to and had no reason not to walk around and see things and go do what we wanted to do. What I remember is we were camping in the woods, and it was very muddy, and we had these structures.
It just
and
rained the whole
campfires.
week. If anybody here is a Gray Fox goer, it's like the most horrible Gray Fox year you ever saw. It was just mud from start to finish.
But what was great was in the tents where the music was, it was warm and dry and fun and great music. So we spent a lot of time in the tents listening to these fiddle players. And I do remember that was my first introduction to spoons. We were all playing spoons on our knees and learning how to do that. And having a good old time, pretty wild and free. It was the 70s. Thank God for the 70s. And then I started to get very itchy. And so I walked up to Mom and I go, "Mom, my back is so itchy." And I ripped my shirt off. And of course I am covered with spots. And one of the guys looks at me and says, "I think that's chicken pox." And yes, indeed it was. And it's highly contagious. So now she's got this 8-year-old kid that is about to infect the entire camp. And I was pretty sick. So they put me in the back of the truck. There was a mattress and a cap in the cab. And so that is where I spent the next several days of the Fiddlers Convention. That's probably why you were wandering around.
Yeah, and I remember walking by the truck and seeing Jen looking out sadly because she wasn't allowed to leave the truck. But I literally remember as that little girl sitting in those same music tents and listening to this one particular fiddler. And of course, I have no idea who it was. And just realizing how incredibly good this person was. And the fact that I had that appreciation for that at that young age, I think that's where the whole love of bluegrass for me really was born, was watching them.
And we were adventurers, and it was always part of the folklore of our family the year we went to the Fiddlers Convention.
Yeah.
So it had a joyful and fun feeling about it. That kind of music was associated with a time of great friendship, lots of people all together, playing music together and eating and just wandering around free.
Yeah.
And I think that kept long time later when you started doing so much bluegrass, Liz. It's like, where did that come from? The Bluegrass Festival. Of course, we say Mom had no idea where he was, but somebody fed us, and somebody was paying attention to the food. And I'll bet you it was
probably
mother
Mom
making sure that there was food. Just the fun of being together, and that anytime the sun would peek out from those clouds, we would be so happy.
What I remember is the last day, speaking of food, there were a lot of potatoes left. Do you remember the potatoes? There was this huge bag of potatoes. And so we decided to play baseball with the potatoes. And I remember they would throw it and then they would hit the potato and of course it would smash into a million pieces. And then we'd run around the bases and we kept just hitting these potatoes over and over again. And I remember there was this one hippie hanger-oner friend and she had this really fuzzy hair that went way out. And the guy hit the potato and a piece of it went in her hair. And so she said, you're out, because she caught it in her hair. Yeah, that's it. So that's what we did the last day, was smash all those potatoes. Well, that is the origin story of the Wolf Sisters and our first adventure down to Fiddler Land.
Well, in 1814 we took a little trip along with Colonel Jackson down the mighty Mississippi. We took a little bacon and we took a little beans. We met the bloody British near the town.
Well, that was amazing trip down memory lane. I have such fond memories of playing with my sisters and being on the farm. And of course, to this day, my sister Jennifer, who happens to be in New York City, we are looking forward to an amazing summer of bluegrass. So we're going to have a lot of fun playing together and singing, which you're going to hear just a little snippet of. So again, remember to follow us at Bluegrass Brooklyn on Instagram and Facebook. The response has been so amazing. So please, if it inspires you to do so, please share our podcast with your friends and family who might also enjoy listening. And thanks so much. See you next time.